Still saying event will start soon.
No, it looks like we're good to go.
Oh, yep. Got a couple of viewers joining now, which is good. Okay, so there's a delay, which is good. So,
Chase in the comments. All right, might give it a minute and see if we get some more people in, and then we can kick on. So we got a couple of YouTube viewers as well, which is fantastic.
Sure do. All right, we'll give it 2 more minutes, and then we'll get it started, just to not hold up those that are here and are potentially on a time schedule.
No problems at all, James. Talking about gap selling is one of my favorite things to do.
Hey, Bianca. Hey, Shreya. So a few more popping into the comments. Luke's here. Shireen. LJ. Throwing out some comments and some comments about Abe's gap selling ability, which is good. Hey, Nick. How are you? All right, so it looks like we've got a fair few people in now. There's also some viewers on YouTube, which is excellent. So we'll get started. So, ladies and gentlemen who've joined us today, thank you very much for jumping on. It's a pleasure to have you here today for Teamgate's first of many webinars. For those that I haven't met, I'm Andrew Martin. I'm the Director of Operations at Teamgate. Also have the pleasure of being joined today by both Teamgate CEO Abe Dima and the #1 best-selling author and certified gap selling trainer, Robin Treasure. How are you both doing today?
Awesome.
Fantastic. Awesome. Ready to go.
Ready to go. That's great to hear. Before we jump in and I hand it over to Abe and Robin to introduce themselves, I'll quickly cover some admin points for today's webinar. So first and foremost, today is an interactive webinar. So that includes both some theory as well as some practical applications, as well as 2 role plays. So those that are in attendance, please drop comments, questions, any observations you have into the comment section, and we'll aim to address those questions and observations during the short intervals between agenda items. I'll also have some handy links pinned in the comments. If you require additional information, though, please drop a comment and I'll follow up either during the webinar or post-webinar, but just ask as we go through. Now for the admin, I'll now hand it over to our hosts and get this webinar started. So first and foremost, Abe Dima, CEO of Teamgate.
All right, awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Andrew. Really appreciate it. So today, myself, I'm the CEO over at Teamgate, and it's really exciting today because one thing that we try to bring to our Teamgate community is understanding a little bit more about sales and get to understand sales a little bit more. And today, I have the absolute pleasure to have Robin on today, who's written a book called Heart Powered Sales, and she is a certified gap selling trainer, which is fantastic. And we're lucky to have her on here today. And everything about heart powered sales and gap selling, they're so intertwined together. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. For people who haven't heard about gap selling, it's going to change the way that you look at sales as you move forward, and really trying to move it more into a partnership as opposed to just trying to get someone to sign that dotted line. So really excited to have Robin on, and I'll hand over to her for an introduction.
Thanks so much, Abe. I'm super happy to be here. And before we dive in, I wanted to get a sense of how many of you have a basic understanding of gap selling. And how many of you, this is just brand new? And there's no right or wrong answer. Just go ahead and pop it into the chat. Is this brand new, or you've got some knowledge and you want to dive deeper? Go ahead and pop it into the chat. I'm curious to know.
All right. While we're waiting for some of those answers there, one thing that we, just to go through a bit of agenda, what we're looking at today is Robin's going to give us an overview of those gap selling. So for those of you who say, I have absolutely no idea about gap selling, it's brand new, versus those people who are experienced, Robin's just going to give us an overview of gap selling. And then the really exciting part is we're actually going to go through a role play of gap selling. And so for me, that's really going to be exciting because we get to see Robin go through a gap selling experience herself, which is going to be, I think, really influential for the team, for everyone who's joined here today, to understand a lot more about gap selling and how to actually apply it.
Yeah, awesome. And so it does look like it's brand new to a lot of people, and some people have some knowledge. So that's a great starting point for us today. In our limited time together, we're just going to be able to cover some of the foundational concepts. And like Abe said, then we're going to actually do a little demonstration of what it's like in action. So just to let you know a little bit about who I am and how did I get here. So sales is actually a second career for me. My first career, I was an Italian translator. I lived in Rome, Italy, and I was there for 4 years. I translated screenplays and subtitles, and in the film industry, it was a really, really fun thing. But then my passion for health and nutrition kept growing. And as a result, that is what got me into sales. I took on a B2B selling role, selling nutritional supplements to healthcare practitioners. And in the space of 5 years, I was able to actually more than 10x my sales territory, from a couple $100,000 a year to $2.8 million per year, again, in the span of 5 years. And what enabled me to do that was a lot of emotional intelligence and intuition. And when people started to ask me, like, well, what are you doing? That's what compelled me to write my book, Heart Powered Sales. So I wrote Heart Powered Sales and published that last year. Again, it's about how to leverage your emotional intelligence and intuition. Then I went on to learn gap selling. And I have to say that when I learned gap selling, it's like the lights came on for me. It was that whole other missing piece that I had been missing, that I hadn't had before. And it has transformed the way I sell. It has transformed everything, so much so that I went on to become a certified sales trainer. I want you all to imagine for a second, put yourselves in Rome, Italy. And imagine that you want to go and explore all of the beautiful monuments that you've heard about, and you want to have this incredible experience, but you don't have a map. So you end up just kind of stumbling around trying to find your way. And that's what it can be like for a lot of people when they're in sales and they're not given a map. Or imagine that you have been given a map, and that map shows you where all the ATMs are in Rome, but it doesn't show you any monuments. Well, now you know how to get to the ATMs, but that's not getting you the experience that you want. And that's very analogous to a lot of the sales processes that we are given. It's very product centric. It gets us to the ATM, but because it's so product centric, we don't actually have the entire experience that we want and that our buyers want. So I'm going to share some of those cornerstones of what that means in our short time today.
Not to derail the conversation, Robin, but
Yeah.
when you first moved into sales, I mean, it's super important switch where you went from, a translator into sales,
Yes.
and you said your emotional intelligence brought you through. Did you receive any formal sales training as a part of that transition?
Only in as much as I was a health coach for a few years before going into B2B selling. And so that health coaching experience taught me, I learned a lot about how to sell, how to enroll clients into my high-end private programs. But when I became a B2B seller, my sales training was product training. How many of you can relate to that? By a show of hands, just put it in the chat. Yep. Product training is a lot of what we get, but we don't actually learn how to sell. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that'd be really interesting to know, how many people who are here today actually received formal sales training as a part of their, first role in sales, or was it something they needed to seek themselves?
Yeah, I'd be curious as well. So if people care to share that in the chat, and I know that that can be something kind of vulnerable to share as well, but the reality is, there are so many myths around selling and so many either missing or misguided templates that we're given on how to really do it. So again, the map taking us to the ATM, but not to the great monuments. So so that's how I got into it. I want to ask you all a question, and you can share it in the chat or just give it a second to think about it. But when you are speaking with your buyers, are you focusing more on product or on their problems? What do you aim to do in your work? Do you aim to talk about product or about how you are addressing problems and how you can help them with those problems?
Since some people are probably pretty new to gap selling, Robert, what would you say would be a product focus question or focus versus a problem focus?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So product is when, we're representing like a software or some kind of a tool that helps people do better in their business.
Feel free to use Teamgate in any analogy that you want.
Exactly. So let's say that I sell Teamgate CRM. And Teamgate CRM has all these incredible features that can help people. And because you're so well versed in it, or if I'm selling it, I'm so well versed in it, that I know that it can help people. But the people can't see it until you connect it to a problem. So their problems, and we're going to dive more into what kind of problems are we looking for, right? To go back to the Rome analogy, which monuments are we looking for? That's how it transforms the conversation. So, so looking at their problems, but what problems to look for, that's kind of what we're going to dive into here. But I do see that, a lot of people are saying, yes, they do want to focus on their problems versus the product, which is a really great place to start. And hey, as we go through this, if some of you kind of have a light bulb moment of like, oh gosh, I guess I really do focus on my product. This is not about shaming anyone. This is just about having the conversation and shifting the way we sell, right? Because the reality is, it's not that you can't sell. We've all been taught to sell, but the key difference is that we haven't been taught to diagnose. Diagnosis involves really understanding the full business environment of the people that you're selling to and the problems that are happening in their environment and what's causing those. So to go straight to, technical problems, which we'll explain in just a minute what that is, business problems versus technical problems. If you go straight to the technical problem, you're missing the bigger picture. And you haven't actually diagnosed, is the fact that they're missing that Teamgate CRM, is that actually the cause of the problems that they're experiencing in their business? So diagnosis is one of the key first concepts of gap selling that I want to share with you, is to think of yourself as a doctor, not just a pharmacist who fills the prescription that the patient shows up with. Taking that a step further, when we talk about gap selling, what are the big monuments that we're looking for? We are looking for the problems in their current state. We're looking for their desired outcome in their future state, and we're measuring the gap in between. And by measuring the gap in between, that's the value that you bring. So let's imagine that you're talking to a business and they are behind on their revenue targets and they're currently hitting just $20 million per year. And their desired revenue target is $50 million per year. And they want to get there within a couple of years. The space between the current state and the future state is the gap, as in the gap of gap selling. And it's the value of what you can bring if you can actually help address a problem that enables them to achieve the outcome that they desire. So if you sell a CRM that is X number of dollars per month, that's not the value. If that CRM can help get that company to 50 million from 20 million, it's a $30 million value.
And Robin, you mentioned the current state and the future state there. Do you want to just quickly run us through what those two states are?
Yeah.
Those who aren't aware of gap selling.
Yeah, and this will be just a super quick, overview. But with the current state, you are measuring what are the business problems, what are the impacts of those problems, what is the root cause of those problems, and even what is the emotion around those problems. And then with the future state, you are looking at what is the desired outcome that they want, what problems have gone away, and what solutions have they looked at, what solutions are they considering that would help those root problems go away, and the new emotion as well. But the most important thing is, rather than jumping to future state, which is what we all want to do because our sale lives in the future state, we need to stay in the current state with our customers. We need to fully understand their current state, which means really diving in, not just to the fact that they lack your product and they haven't bought your product yet, but what are all of the things that are happening in their world that are connected to, or maybe they're not connected to. And that's a part of your diagnosis, is you have to be unattached to making the sale.
And I think that's the biggest struggle that people have. And the biggest thing I see when I do sales reviews and listen to sales calls is people too often want to get to that future state and they don't get curious about what's going on in the current state. Mm-hmm. Someone will mention something and they'll go, okay, on to the next thing. Let me tell you about how our product solves that. Whereas getting really curious about the current state is really, I think, is the key to gap selling and where you're really going to get the most value and see where the sale is.
It really is. And curiosity is the key word there, like getting super curious in fully understanding and not letting your buyer get away with vague statements like, we want to grow our revenue, right? By how much? How much is it now? How much do you want it to be? How much was it last year? All of those details matter.
But why is growing revenue so important? And why specifically that number could be another key part as well.
Yes. What's driving that need? What's behind it, right? All of those things are important to understand. And here's a kicker, and I want you guys to write this all down if you're taking notes. Your buyer is not going to decide to make any change at all, whether it's with you or anyone else, until the problems in their current state have become intolerable or untenable. If they're not intolerable or untenable, it doesn't matter how fabulous your product is. It doesn't matter how much ROI you can promise them. They will not make a change. So in your diagnosis, part of it is shining a light on their problems and understanding them. And sometimes they don't even see them fully for what they are. So to be clear, you're not ever going to artificially inflate a problem for them. No, but you are going to shine a light and help them connect the dots between the problems and then the impacts that are happening as a result and what's causing all of it in the first place.
So you look at educating the buyer on things that they may not have even thought of about how inefficient their current process is, or potentially on how much revenue they might actually be losing because they haven't implemented a solution. So looking at educating them along and guiding them towards the future state. Yes. So essentially, teasing it out and saying like, oh, but what happens when you do this?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so in order to do that, though, you need to know what you're looking for, right? It's like if you're in Rome wandering around, you need to know that the Colosseum is a really great place to visit and that it exists in Rome. and that it's a place that you can go and visit. So you need to know what you're looking for. And that may sound painfully obvious, but for a lot of us, we think that what we're looking for is to sell the product. That's wrong. That's the ATM. What we're actually looking for is the thing. What's the big thing that matters? What's the big Roman Colosseum? What is the big business problem that they're facing? And what are the impacts of those business problems?
And that sort of leads into the, the pick that is a cornerstone of gap selling, right? And having a pick in your organization is essential to, I guess, providing a path for your sales team to effectively identify what those big colosseums are.
Bingo. And Abe, we need to give you an honorary certification because you know it.
Interesting, I know.
Yes. So let's explain what the pick is. And that's a perfect segue into what's our map? How do we know what we're looking for? So the PIC stands for Problem Identification Chart. And every organization and every seller that is a gap seller uses the Problem Identification Chart as their navigation tool. It's your map. And in it, you identify it's usually just 3 or 4 big business problems that you make go away by providing the tool that you offer. So let's give a quick business example, and then I'll give actually a real life example. So Abe, in your world with Teamgate CRM, name one big business problem that you help solve with your CRM.
So one of the big business problems is, being able to achieve the next round of funding for an organization. So whether that be Series A, Series B funding is a business problem.
Okay. And what are some of the things that might be happening in the business that would prevent them from being able to achieve that funding?
So reps being inefficient in sales, so they're not closing the deals, not hitting quota. Potentially there's something wrong with the reporting about understanding if they're going to hit their forecasted goals. What's an effective ICP to target? They don't understand, okay, this is our ICP that we need to target. This is one that's not converting. Potentially there could be stalling in their sales process. So it could be when they send out a proposal, they lose 70% of deals at that proposal stage.
Yeah.
But they may not know that. And so they can't diagnose that as a problem. And so their conversion rates are low as part of the sales team. They're unable to identify reps that are underperforming. They're unable to identify the successful reps because it's important to emulate what they're doing. Those are examples of some of them.
Yeah, so you just gave a bunch of really great examples. And so even just low closing rates could be one of them. That's a problem. And if they don't have a good CRM as a tool to help them achieve the outcome that they want with their main business objectives, that's when they have that problem, and then the impacts, right? So that's a business example. Sometimes it's helpful to take yourself out of the business world and out of whatever it is that you sell and think about a real world example. So let me give you a real world example. Imagine that you have environmental allergies. There's something in the air that's giving you a lot of allergies. And because of that, you can't sleep well at night. Your sleep is really disturbed. What are some of the impacts that could happen in your life because you're not sleeping well? Put it into the chat. There's no right or wrong answers here, so don't be afraid. What are some of the impacts of not sleeping well? What could happen in your life? What bad things could happen in your life? I mean, I know for one, if I'm tired, I'm not on my game when it comes to work. I cannot think, I cannot perform. It doesn't matter how hard I work. I'm like at 50% if I'm not sleeping well.
Decreased productivity is a big one.
Yes, exactly.
And the other one is, shortened lifespan, increase in heart disease, things like that occur through lack of sleep.
That's right. Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of low productivity, fatigue. What happens if you're tossing and turning and sneezing and you have a partner next to you in bed and you become really, really crabby and your partner is really crabby with you? Like, what are the impacts on your relationship there? Mood issues, health issues. Yes. Anxiety, loss of patience, can't concentrate. So these are all impacts. And can you see how that might show up in your relationship, in your bank account? Because maybe you're making less money because you're less productive, in your health, in your anxiety levels, right? So those are all impacts that happen because of one problem, big problem that's showing up, which is you're not sleeping well. The root cause is you have allergies. And there's a technical problem. And the technical problem is that I am lacking an air purifier that's going to help me sleep at night, right? So root cause issue, allergies. Manifests as a business problem, can't sleep, i.e. maybe low closing rates, right? Going back to business problems, low closing rates, poor forecasting. Those are all examples of business problems. And then all of those have downstream impacts. And the air purifier, if I suffer from these problems, I don't give a damn about an air purifier until it starts manifesting as problems in my life. So if you put yourselves in the shoes of someone who is selling an air purifier, would you rather talk with your prospect about the cool buttons and the HEPA filter and the blah, blah, blah of the air purifier? Or would you rather talk to them about the bad sleep and how that's creating downstream impacts in their life? What would you rather?
Are you not as productive at work as you could be? Are you feeling fatigued every day? Does your partner hate you because you toss and turn all night?
There you go. Those are all the things that matter. So here's another thing, another pearl for you to write down if you can. Your buyer's intrinsic motivation to buy is in the impacts. It is not in the root cause problem or in the technical problem, right? Well, technical problem / root cause, that's not where their intrinsic motivation to buy lies. So keep that in mind as we go through the role play that Abe and I are going to do. Let's see. Abe, do you want to set up the role play? Let them know like just the surface level details.
Yeah. And I guess one thing before we go into that, I'll be interested to know if, anyone who's watching has a pick that they've created or whether they have something similar of that nature as a part of their organization, because that'd be really interesting to know. And I'm sure these can come in many different forms, shapes and sizes, but definitely I found that the pick is a good way to look at it. And there's plenty of examples on a sales growth company website as well that has a lot there.
It is. And in fact, I was going to mention too, the pick, again, the problem identification chart, I have a template of that. And so if any of you would like that template to get started on thinking about business problems, impacts, and root cause, send me a DM on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to send you that pick chart.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And to go into the role play. Okay, so the really exciting bit. So this is where we're going to see Robin. So firstly, what we're going to go through is we're just going to go through a normal product-centric style of sales. And we're going to ask for some questions during that role play. And this is where we want the audience to be as interactive as possible, because after that role play, we're going to answer those questions and provide a bit more insight into what we saw. And then role play number 2 is going to be focused around a gap selling style of discovery. But the important point to note here is that we've had to put a cap on the discovery to about 5 minutes. And so what that means is what you're going to see is an abridged version of a discovery call. Ideally, your discovery call should be lasting about 30 minutes. And to do a really in-depth gap selling discovery call, they definitely take 30 minutes, if not longer. If you're product centric, you could probably knock it over in 10 minutes and then start your demo for the next 20 and lose the sale and wonder why they ghosted you. But in essence, this is going to be an abridged version, 5 minutes each. Andrew's going to pop some questions inside the chat. So what I really want people to do is just give an answer. It doesn't matter whether you think it's right or wrong, or if you feel shy, just jump in, give an answer. It's a no judgment zone. And Robin and I will do our best to provide a response that, potentially might allow people to grow a little bit from this webinar. But also we'll go through and talk about some of the areas that we saw in areas of concern with the different role plays. So Robin, do you want to give the scenario of?
Sure. Yeah. So this is in this scenario, I am selling Teamgate CRM, and Abe is going to be John. John is a sales director at a startup. And this startup is called Vibrant Teams because they have an app that companies use for employee wellness to help with stress reduction, fitness, and nutrition. So this is all that I know as the seller, as the Teamgate CRM seller, is that, he's interested. He says he needs a CRM. He wants to learn about our CRM. And that's all that I know. As we go through this first round, remember, this is not an example of how you should do it. This is an example of how it is often done, so that we can compare and contrast between first and second rounds. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, John, thanks so much for reaching out. I understand you want to learn more about our CRM. What CRM are you using currently?
Yeah, Robin, I currently don't use a CRM at the moment. Using some Excel spreadsheets, and some of the sales team have their own ideas about how they keep track of things.
Oh, wow. Okay. I can imagine that might be a bit difficult for you. And what kind of information are you capturing on the spreadsheets?
It really differs between who the salesperson is and what they have in their spreadsheet. But generally, it's the prospect's name, their contact details, email, phone number, company name, size, and generally when we last contacted the prospect. Some people have when they expect them to close, so they can sort of figure out their commission month to month. But outside that, there's not really too much in it.
I see. Okay. And what is your team's process then for actually remembering to follow up and have a cadence with prospects who haven't closed yet?
It depends on the sales rep is the biggest thing. We have some people that like to use their calendar. So they, the more organized people will plan out when they're going to get in contact with people. I guess the unorganized people go through the spreadsheet from top to bottom each day and diagnose who they need to call, who they need to email, things like that. And I imagine there's probably some sales reps who are doing nothing at all.
Okay. So yeah, I get the sense it's a little all over the map. Do you think that that's costing you leads that might be falling through the cracks?
Probably. The big issue is that I just don't know, because we use Excel spreadsheets. So, and I have to take the sales people's words for what they're doing and what's going to convert. And, right now I guess we don't know which leads are hot, which leads are cold, who's ghosting, things like that.
Yeah. Which is why you're talking to us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so can you give me an idea? What have you budgeted for your CRM?
Yeah, it's about $500 a month.
Okay. Okay. And are you the main decision maker on this, or does anyone else need to be involved in the conversation?
No, as a head of sales, it's pretty much my CEO's just said, go and find something, make it work.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool. So you've got free reign on that pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And how soon do you want to get started using a CRM?
can we get started today? You know, the
Oh,
sooner
wow.
the better, realistically. Yeah.
Okay, that's music to my ears. Cool. Well, why don't I walk you through? I'll do a quick demo just to show you how it works, and then I can get you started. How does that sound?
Yeah, sweet. Let's
Okay,
do it.
cool. Okay, into round one. So Andrew has popped some really good questions in here in the chat. Abe, did you have any reflections on that?
One thing that I commonly see with an approach like what's just happened is that, I mean, that's not when people get these sales calls that come in and they're like, yeah, I want to get moving. Let's move now. And, you know, I want to start ASAP. They feel like the pressure is on them to, I need to show a product today. Otherwise, this is going to be lost. And then they do this demo. And I call it like a feature slap up demo, is how I commonly refer to it when I'm talking to my sales team. And those that are listening and be like, yes, I get it. And so what it is you essentially open up, you know, let's just say we're demoing Teamgate, you open up Teamgate and you're like, all right, here's the nav bar. Here's all the stuff that's in the nav bar. Let's click through here. Look at this. Look at this over here. Do you like this? And you're just guessing and you're just slapping up features and hoping that one of them, the prospect's going to go, oh, I like that. And you go, oh, okay, you like that? Well, let's look more into this. And realistically, you may not achieve anything out of that demo.
Exactly. And so a lot of those features are going to go over their head. It's going to overwhelm them, and it's not going to be relevant. And here's what can be even worse. So, you know, best case scenario, it's just not relevant. And the buyer walks away and says, let me think about it. And they're thinking, maybe I should compare. And maybe there's another CRM that does the same thing, but it costs less. And so then it's same. I might as well go with the less costly option, right? But there's something even worse that can happen, which is, what if I sell you a product because you tell me that this is what you need, but it doesn't actually solve the big problem that's happening in your organization? What's going to happen next year when your contract is up for renewal? Right?
And that I think is a really, really big thing, is that salespeople feel the pressure to throw this on and almost force the product onto people. And then it gets to renewal, or you get 3 months down the line, they say, hey, this doesn't do what you told me it did, or yes, this doesn't do anything for us. We want to cancel our contract.
Yes.
And then it just creates this, you don't achieve customer delight. All you achieve is potentially, a bad review on G2 or something like that occurs as a result.
Yeah. So bad reviews, the customer has spent money that didn't fix their problem. Are you going to get any referrals from that customer? No. Yeah. It's actually created more harm than good. And Nick, you got it. Bant. I banted him quite a bit. I asked what your budget was. I asked if you're the authority to make the decision. How soon do you need it? Did any of that add value to your world, Abe?
When I hear people go through BANT, and as a CEO, I do a lot of sales calls with, people trying to sell me stuff. And as soon as I hear BANT, it just immediately has this reaction where you go, oh, I can see exactly it's just so blatantly obvious there, where you go, oh, well, what budget are you thinking about for this? Do I need to include anyone else on the call? Or are you the decision maker? Oh, how fast do you want to move? They're all the same question, and it's so blatantly obvious what's occurring. And Nick, you got it absolutely right. I was hoping you would.
Yes.
So 100%. And then Sage is also put in here. There's a missed opportunity to understand what the impact is having their process be based on each sales rep. There's no consistency. What's the impact on their team? 100% Sage.
Sage, you nailed that. You nailed it. What are the impacts? What's happening because of this?
And this is where we talk about curiosity, where you hear things like that and you go, oh, no, that must really suck. Okay, now do you have the budget though?
Yes, exactly. So you're not leveraging your curiosity to lean in and really understand what's happening in their world as a result of those problems.
And one thing I want to do, Robin, is just take this out of, the AE, SDR space and look at the sales manager one up just that little bit more. Because if there's any sales managers on the call, you need to ask yourself, well, how am I reviewing deals when I do deal review each week? How am I doing a sales film review? Are you entering into a deal and then going, well, have they got the budget? Have they got the authority? When is this going to close? What's the timeline on this? Do they have the need, right? If you're going in and asking those questions, your sales reps are going to immediately, the first thing they're going to do is go, do they have the budget? Oh, I only want to spend $20 on this, $20 per month on this. Oh, sorry, you don't have the budget. See you later. But we haven't identified the gap and the value that can be saved. And you say, look, I know you budgeted $20, but we're going to make you $20 million over 3 years or 1 year using this product.
There you go. That's exactly it. As sales managers, the question that you need to be asking each of your team members is, why should that customer buy? Why should they buy? What is the gap? And the budget, the authority, the need, the timing, none of that addresses why they should buy. It's actually just serving you as the seller to give you a better idea if they're so quote unquote qualified, but it's not actually bringing any value or insight into why they should actually buy your product.
Exactly. And I think, these comments here are fantastic that come. Sage has nailed it again. Transactional, lacks empathy. That's banned 100%. Natalie, in the comment about unorganized process, I think this is a really key point that people don't look at often enough. And, one thing that we look at case studies that have been done on sales is consistency is key. And it's been proven, that you have a higher success rate with 6 follow-ups. If you're able to contact a lead within 5 minutes of them submitting a request, your ability to contact that lead significantly increases. And so the point is here is that having that consistency built into the team and aligning the sales team to do those specific things is going to mean that we're going to have not only a consolidated information, but a consistency in process. So you can't increase your conversion rates or run tests to increase your conversion rates if you are not doing the same thing across the entire organization. So if, Joe over here is doing one thing and Sarah's over here doing another thing, we can't build consistency to understand if there is a trend in what our funnel is doing.
Exactly. So why don't we jump into round 2? Yeah. And as we're doing this, I want you all to listen. This is going to be a different conversation. You're going to hear more business problems and impacts come out. When you hear them, when you identify them, think ding, 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 and put it into the chat if you can. Any business problems or impacts that you identify in here, go ahead and put it in and share it.
And one thing I'd say is this is going to be an abridged discovery. So what I want you to really pick out is the curiosity that Robin should show, although she's not able to due to time constraints, about things that I say. If you think there's a good follow-up question that she should ask to a response I give, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll talk about it when we get to the end.
Exactly. Yes, please do. And again, because we're going to this is abbreviated. We're going to rush through, but just to give you the sense. So be listening with your ears wide open. Okay, so round 2, exact same scenario, but different conversation. So John, tell me what prompted you to reach out to us today?
Yeah, Robin. So for me, I've been looking for a CRM. I need to implement something ASAP. And from what I've looked on the web and from talking to a few different people, I understand Teamgate moves pretty quickly and we're able to get up and running really fast. And for us, time is of the essence. I've been in the role now for a month and we really need to start seeing results and moving forward.
Okay. I'm curious, what's driving that urgency when you say time is of the essence?
Yeah. So as I said, I've been in the role now for a month of sales manager, and we are coming up to a deadline where we need to start showing results to get Series A funding. And one thing we're really looking for is that we need our sales team to be humming. We need our sales team to be producing, hitting our revenue milestones so we can achieve that goal.
Okay. So when you mention your revenue milestones, can you share with me what those milestones are and where you are in reference to those?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the moment, we're generating around 7,000. I mean, it's really hard to say because we don't have a CRM, so it's a bit difficult. But our best bet is that we're generating around $7,000 MRR monthly of new revenue, and where we really need to be is we need to get to 10,000 as a minimum, and that's really going to show and allow us to hit our revenue milestones and also play a bit of catch up as we move forward as well.
Okay, gotcha. So it sounds like there's a 30% delta between where you are and where you actually need to be with your targets. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got 5 salespeople, and I should say that they're each producing around 7,000 MRR,
Okay.
but we need them up around 10,000. And at the moment, I've got no idea who's performing and who's not. So on average, across the 5 reps, that's what we're looking at the moment.
I see. Okay. And so when you say you're not sure who is where, how's your team managing your accounts currently?
Yeah, so I'm a bit ashamed to say it, but they're operating out of spreadsheets, and they're operating in individual spreadsheets. We tried to consolidate it, but there was a lot of, I guess, discussion about what we should actually put in the master spreadsheet, and it didn't really go anywhere. So now I think it's time to move forward, get a CRM, and formalize this.
Okay, gotcha. Well, no shame, no judgment. We work with a lot of startups who are where you are right now. So tell me then about what is their process currently for managing those prospects that need multiple touch points?
Yeah, it really depends on who the sales rep is. I'm sure I've got really successful sales reps that I, need to praise more, that are contacting our prospects quickly when they come in through inbound leads, or they're doing a lot more outbound than the other reps, potentially doing more consistent follow-ups, things like that. But for me, the biggest problem is I just don't know what. I've tried to implement a process, and I've put a process in place. Here's our sales process. Here's what we do. Here's our standards. Here's what we need to meet. But the problem is I can't track that. I have no idea, because we're a remote team, like most people are these days, if they're actually doing it. We're not in the office. I can't sit over someone's shoulder and say, why haven't you called them, within 5 minutes? Is this a 6th follow-up? And so really I need some way to understand that across the organization.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. And so, when I ask you this next question, I know you're just going to have to give an estimate, and no worries, but do you have a sense of how many open leads there are per rep?
Yeah, so the 5 reps, there's probably anywhere between 30 to 50 leads per rep.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, in our experience, typically what we see is that when a sales team has a manual process for managing their follow-ups with prospects, typically they are losing about 30% more business versus a team that's using a CRM that has a consistent process process in place so that you can accurately manage those. So even just with that, I can say that 30% delta may easily be met with this. But more importantly, taking a step back, you had mentioned that you need to close that 30% delta so that you can then pursue your Series A funding. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. At a minimum, we need to hit that 10,000 MRR per rep per month of new MRR to make sure that we're on track to show the background that we can sell, we can sell the product.
Gotcha. Yeah, because otherwise you'll have to delay pursuing that funding, correct?
Yeah, or potentially the time passes and we won't get funding.
Yeah. Which could potentially mean millions, I imagine.
Yeah, I don't imagine the CEO will be too happy about that.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So with what the information that you've shared, I'm going to take this and, really make sure that I've understood everything. I may have some more questions for you, but then what I'll do is I'll put together my recommendation for the state that you're in and what is the root cause of that. We'll walk through it all together and I'll be able to make my best recommendation for you to go forward. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Okay, great. And I know time is of the essence, so shall we reconvene in 3 days?
Yeah, 3 days should be good. I've got some spare time Friday, 10 a.m.
Perfect. Let's do it. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So end of round 2 there. Did we discover a lot more information in this second one here? Like huge stuff. Yes. Deadline, funding. I mean, this is earth-shattering information. Exactly right, Sage. They need to be hitting those targets. So there's a huge gap in their revenue, and then there is the possibility of not being able to get the funding that they need. So this is when it comes to intrinsic motivation, where does the intrinsic motivation lie? Is it going to be in the impact of delayed or possibly no funding? Or is it going to be in the need for a CRM? Yes, Nick, funding goal met. That is where the intrinsic motivation lies.
And when you look at it, there is no need for a CRM if we're not looking to hit our funding goal. We're not going to be concerned about that, right? Because we just happy ticking along, 7,000 per rep. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not going to get a Series A funding.
That's right. So the fact that you're working with Excel spreadsheets in and of itself, I mean, yes, it can make us cringe if we think about it.
Definitely makes me cringe.
Yeah, but it's not actually a problem until it becomes a problem, right? So just like with an air purifier, if I don't have an air purifier and my allergies are so mild it doesn't affect my sleep, do I have a problem? Am I motivated to buy an air purifier? No. So it's all about getting to those intrinsic motivations. And I know we're coming up at the top of the hour. So, but love that comment. Yeah, the flow is very natural. Things happen much more naturally in this way, right?
You're not asking, what's your budget?
Yeah. What's your
decision maker? It's more about finding out and being curious about what they have. I'll be interested. Did anyone identify any points that Robin could have drawn out a little bit more? That'd be really interesting to know as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there were a lot of different roads that we could have taken to explore more, right? There's so much to dive into. I mean, a real discovery, 30 minutes minimum. So much time it can really take time to dive into it all, to really understand that current state, for sure.
All right. I think, while we wait for that, what I want to say is that today's been really informative. I know we've got 5 minutes left, been really informative as far as gap selling goes. And it's really just a tease. For those people who don't know what gap selling is or have a little bit of understanding, you probably would have learned a little bit, but it goes so deep that, we've only just touched the surface level, and there's so much more value that you can really gain from gap selling and looking at how you implement it across your organization, whether you're a sales manager, whether you're an account executive, whether you're an SDR. It's like, what are you saying when you jump onto those cold calls? How are you establishing the value, the credibility that comes with it? When you're an AE, when you're doing your discovery calls, how are you going through getting the current state, the future state, understanding the gap, and then showing that value as you move forward? Or are you just stuck in this product mud hole? And trust me, it is hard. When a lot of people try to implement gap selling, it is really, really difficult because it's almost like a complete 180 from what you've previously been doing. And often it doesn't come natural to people. And I think that's a really big bit as well. So what I want to use, the final few minutes for is that I'd like to, offer the opportunity to Robin just to, show how people can get in touch with Robin if they are interested in learning more about gap selling as well.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate what you said, that it's hard. It can be challenging, especially because habits run deep, and the way we sell, the habits that we get into, the questions that we are used to asking, it can take some time to undo it. But the great news is you've already been doing what you've been doing. Okay, now imagine if you can amplify your success and do even better, right? There is just such transformative power in the way your entire discovery call will go once you learn these principles. The great news is gap selling is not complicated. It's actually quite simple. And we really did touch on most of the key concepts. But then executing it really takes practice, and it takes a lot of it can take a lot of work to actually put it into action, because again, habits can run really deep. I would love for anyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am quite active on LinkedIn, so please do connect with me there. If you would like to get the problem identification chart template, I'll be happy to send that to you. So just send me a DM on LinkedIn and I'll send that to you. And then you can also, check out my website, robintreasure.com, which Andrew just put into the chat.
Awesome. And one thing I'd like to say as well is that Teamgate, we love gap selling at Teamgate, and our sales team have actually stood up a gap selling pipeline. And so the implementation of gap selling, half the battle's already won because the process is there for the sales team. So what I'd like to say is thank you so much, Robin, for joining us today. I know you've got a really busy schedule this week, so I appreciate you jumping on, and especially at short notice, coming and talking about gap selling, because I was really excited to get this webinar done on gap selling, because I think it just provides so much value. And as Brady said, the mission at gap selling is, or a sales growth company, is to, change the way we sell, change the way the world sells. And I think looking at that, I'm sure everyone's had a terrible sales experience and everyone can relate to it. And that's a sad thing, because we should be trying to help people.
That's right. And I want to thank you, Abe, for the opportunity to share, because I am passionate about gap selling. I love what it can do. And what I would love to just share as a final thought too is that it's all rooted in empathy. It's all about putting yourself in your buyer's shoes, separating yourself from making the sale, just focusing on learning more about them and their environment. But you are the leader, bringing your insight, bringing your perspective, knowing what you're looking for, because you've got that map. That's when you bring so much more value to their lives. You bring understanding, a sense of that they're feeling understood, seen, heard, and understood. All of those things matter. And in our world today, more than ever, empathy is what we really need. So that's what I love about this entire methodology.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for everyone that joined as well, and for the comments and the interactions that people have had. It wouldn't be the same without everyone here providing their comments and providing Robin and I with some great talking points. So thank you so much for everyone being involved. And until next time, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.